I've said the word relationship and trust, the phrase relationship and trust a lot. And that's because it's really, really key. As Howie says, do more listening than preaching when you're talking to people. And this brings us to the idea of deep canvassing. Deep canvassing, or is also called relational organizing, is about having long, repeated conversations with voters and community members to build trust and good relationships that may eventually shift opinions, even if they don't initially agree. There's research out there about it. Calla and Bruckman show that door-to-door canvassing, which is what you tend to see during the mainstream elections from the major parties, where they knock on your door, they talk at you a bunch, and they hand you a piece of paper telling them why they should vote for you. They have almost nearly zero effect on voting choices. They rarely change people's mind. Both parties tend to only knock the doors of the people that are already on their side, right? It's voter turnout. It's not organizing and changing minds. But research has shown that it really doesn't have a big impact on people's voting choices or their actions. However, deep canvassing does have measurable effects. In fact, one study in particular found that 10-minute conversations have had an impact on reducing transphobia, right? Because when you just tell them, transphobia is bad, do this thing, and you walk away, you didn't have a conversation. You didn't address their concerns, whether those concerns are rational or reasonable or anything. People aren't going to change their mind if their concerns aren't addressed, right? But in a 10-minute conversation, you can get to some of that. You can counter some of that. And through repeated 10-minute conversations, you can actually move people on things. And it's more effective than any other form of outreach: flyers, mailers, speeches, rallies, etc. Another area where this comes in, it would be turnout for events, right? You post on Facebook, you send an e-blast, you maybe put up some flyers around town, but none of that's going to be as effective as phone banking and door knocking to the people that you want to show up and saying, will you commit to going? The one-on-one conversations are where it's at. It's where you get the return, in terms of turning people out and engagement and outreach and changing people's minds. Some tips on deep canvassing: it's got to be more than one encounter. Repeat contact, do check-ins, right? You talked to them a few weeks ago, go see how things are going. And you don't jump, I'm talking about organizing in your community. So you don't have to jump straight into, so about that vote we had, we were talking about. How's their family doing, right? How's work? How are their holidays? That kind of thing. What are they doing for New Year's? And get into the deeper stuff, right? One way I often talk about this is, you start talking to someone and they complain about an issue in your community. Oh, yeah. And as a good socialist organizer, you make some connections. You have another conversation, you keep meeting those connections. Then a few months later, you're like, hey, you remember that thing that you're talking about? We're actually going to have some people going to city council, and speaking about it. I'm not asking you to speak, but you want to come with us and show that we have support. So now all you're asking them to do is go downtown and sit in a room for an hour. And you've talked about it, and that they know where you're at, they know where they're at, and the way higher chance that they're going to show up, right? And then a few months after that, they may be the one speaking, right? And a few months after that, they may be organizing a rally. But you had to start those conversations. You had to take it through step by step by step. One of the real keys in grassroots organizing is you can't jump straight up to the top, because then when you do that, you start astroturfing and you start top down organizing, right? You betray the system. So it's got to be more than one encounter. In terms of electoralism, this means you don't start in an election year, right? The kind of work we're talking about is long term. It's a years long process. Listen to their people's concerns and relate those concerns to your platform and systemic problems. Don't put the voter on the spot with leading questions. Ask what their concerns are, and then over time, like I said, you make small asks and you move folks up to that ladder of engagement. And some people may max out on their ladder of engagement, right? All they're going to do is this. That's fine. Don't chase them away because they won't take the next step. You can continue to apply some light pressure, check-ins and all that, but don't try to make people do things they're not comfortable with.